I've been curious about the language of the birds for a very long time, and I looked it up once before, I think on YouTube, and at the time I didn't really find anything, but today this came up and I just Googled it and I'm on Wikipedia and there's quite a bit of information here. In mythology, medieval literature, and occultism, the language of the birds is postulated as a mystical, perfect divine language, green language, Adamic language, Enochian, angelic language, or a mythical or magical language used by birds to communicate with the initiated. In Indo-European religion, the behavior of birds has long been used for the purposes of divination by augurs, according to a suggestion by Walter Burkert. These customs may have their roots in the Paleolithic when, during the Ice Age, early humans looked for carrion by observing scavenger birds. There are also examples of contemporary bird-human communication and symbiosis. In North America, ravens have been known to lead wolves and native hunters to prey they otherwise would be unable to consume. In Africa, the greater honey guide is known to guide humans to beehives in the hope that the hive will be incapacitated and opened for them. Dating to the Renaissance, birdsong was the inspiration for some magical engineered languages, in particular musical languages. Whistled languages, based on spoken natural languages, are also sometimes referred to as the language of the birds. Some language games are also referred to as the language of birds, such as in Oromo and Amharic of Ethiopia. Ukrainian language is known as nightingale speech amongst its speakers. Mythology, Norse mythology. In Norse mythology, the power to understand the language of the birds was a sign of great wisdom. The god Odin had two ravens called Hugin and Munin, who flew around the world and told Odin what happened among mortal men. The legendary king of Sweden, Dag the Wise, was so wise that he could understand what birds said. He had a tame house sparrow, which flew around and brought back news to him. Once a farmer in Rydgot Aland killed Dag's sparrow, which brought on a terrible retribution from the Swedes. In the Rigsbula, Conor was able to understand the speech of birds. When Conor was riding through the forest hunting and snaring birds, a crow spoke to him and suggested he would win more if he stopped hunting mere birds and rode to battle against foemen. The ability could also be acquired by tasting dragon blood. According to the Poetic Edda and the Volsunga saga, Sigurd accidentally tasted dragon's blood while roasting the heart of Fafnir. This gave him the ability to understand the language of birds, and his life was saved. As the birds were discussing Regin's plan to kill Sigurd, through the same ability, Aslog, Sigurd's daughter, found out the betrothment of her husband Ragnar Lodbrok to another woman. The 11th century Ramsund carving in Sweden depicts how Sigurd learnt the language of birds in the Poetic Edda and the Volsunga saga. Sigurd is sitting naked in front of the fire preparing the dragon heart from Fafnir for his foster father Regin, who is Fafnir's brother. The heart is not finished yet, and when Sigurd touches it, he burns himself and sticks his finger to his mouth. As he has tasted dragon blood, he starts to understand the bird's song. The birds say that Regin will not keep his promise of reconciliation and will try to kill Sigurd, which causes Sigurd to cut off Regin's head. In an Eddic poem loosely connected with the Sigurd tradition, which is named, I don't know how to say that word, The reason why a man named Atli once had the ability is not explained. Atli's lord's son Helgi would marry what was presumably Sigurd's aunt, the Valkyrie Svafa. Greek mythology. According to Apollonius Rhodius, the figurehead of Jason's ship, the Argo, was built from oak of the sacred grove at Dodona and could speak the language of the birds. Tiresias was also said to have been given the ability to understand the language of the birds by Athena. The language of birds in Greek mythology may be attained by magical means. Democritus, Anaximander, Apollonius of Tyana, Melampus, and Aesopus were all said to have understood the birds. The birds are also mentioned in Homer's Odyssey. Afro-Asiatic folklore. In the Quran, Suleiman, Solomon, and David are said to have been taught the language of the birds. Within Sufism, the language of the birds is a mystical divine language. The Conference of the Birds is a mystical poem of 46-47 verses by the 12th century Persian poet Attar of Nisapur. In the Jerusalem Talmud, Solomon's proverbial wisdom was due to his being granted understanding of the language of the birds by God. In Egyptian Arabic, hieroglyphic writing is called the alphabet of the birds. Folklore. The concept is also known from many folk tales, including Welsh, Russian, German, Estonian, Greek, Romani, where usually the protagonist is granted the gift of understanding the language of the birds, either by some magical transformation or as a boon by the king of birds. The birds then inform or warn the hero about some danger or hidden treasure. One example is the Russian story, The Language of the Birds. Alchemy. In Kabbalah, Renaissance magic, and alchemy, the language of the birds was considered a secret and perfect language and the key to perfect knowledge, sometimes also called the langue verte, or green language. Jean Julian Fulcanelli, Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, De Occulta Philosophia. Literature and culture. Compare also the rather comical and satirical Birds of Aristophanes and Parliament of Fowls by Chaucer. In medieval France, the language of the birds was a secret language of the troubadours, connected with the tarot, allegedly based on puns and symbolism drawn from homophony, e.g. an inn called a Lion d'Or, or the Golden Lion, is allegedly code for in the bed one sleeps. René Guénon, I hope I'm saying that right, René Guénon has written an article about the symbolism of the language of the birds. Hieroglyphs, is a systematic study on the subject, but is only available in French. The artificial language ZAUM, Z-A-U-M, of Russian futurism was described as language of the birds by Velimir Klebnikov. The Language of the Birds is a 1991 German movie. Jean Sibelius composed a wedding march titled Language of the Birds in 1911. The children's book author Raphael Martin has written The Language of the Birds as an adaptation of a Russian folk tale. It was made into a children's opera by composer John Kennedy. In the film The Librarian Quest for the Spear, the protagonist is given a book written in the language of the birds that he is tasked to decipher in order to find the spear. In her first book, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, Susanna Clarke, in her faux footnotes, refers to a book called The Language of the Birds. It is, among other things, a reference to the fictional Raven King. The English musician Sting released a song called Language of the Birds on his 2013 album, The Last Ship. See also bird vocalization, confusion of tongues, glossolalia, musical language. And there's a few exterior links. So interesting. Great jumping off point. I hope you guys have enjoyed this as much as I have. I love to learn. And this has been on my mind for the last couple days. And I thought, you know what? Let's just look it up. And there's some interesting stuff here. If there's anything you would like me to look up and learn with you, or because you already know about it, leave me a message. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Take care till next time.